Plain Bob Doubles Revisited. This is a series of 3 tutorials that I originally put together for the Band of St Mary's in Shenfield. The first 2 parts were given in March 2020. Unfortunately, the final part was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I've put this video together so it can be shared whilst we're all self-isolating. I hope you find at least some of it interesting. Our learners at Shenfield are progressing very nicely through the learning the ropes scheme, and some of them are at level 5, and here they're expected to be able to call touches. So I wrote this series of tutorials to give them the information they needed and to answer some of the other questions that they had. It also gave us the opportunity to cover some of the ringing theories that may have been missed as they were learning their first methods. Right, by absolutely no means do you need everything presented here to be able to ring plain Bob doubles successfully. However, some of what is covered will help you understand methods in general and may help to keep yourself right. I also hope that you may find some of this interesting. Okay, so firstly we will go through the theory of plain Bob doubles, which is often the first method to be learnt. Some of the ways methods can be written out can be quite confusing, so I'll spend a little time on this. We would like you to understand how touches are called, so you can eventually call a touch if this is what you'd like to do. We'll be going through some of the signposts that you can use to help keep yourself right, and the band right if you're conducting. And finally, I'd like to show you how coursing order is also used by experienced conductors to magically put the band right where necessary. To get the most out of this series, you really should be able to ring touches of plain Bob doubles with confidence. However, if you can't, I hope you'll be able to find something of interest which you may be able to squirrel away and use in the future. In the first in this series, we'll be going back over plain Bob doubles. We'll be looking at the various ways in which the method can be written out, including the blue line, the grid and place notation, and we'll look at the concept of lead heads, lead head notation and of place bells. The second part will look at how touches of plain Bob doubles are called. We will show the calling positions and demonstrate how you can call your first touch. We'll cover a number of different touches which will lead on to the techniques used for calling a quarter peal. In part 3 we look at how you can keep yourself and the band right. So firstly we'll look at some of the signposts that can be helpful, and we'll go on to expose some of the mysteries of coursing order. Okay, so just as a little warning, when we start learning plain hunt and plain Bob doubles, we're usually discouraged from learning the order of the bells to follow, but instead encouraged to count your place. Here we'll be telling you that the order you follow the bells can be extremely useful when conducting. And when learning plain Bob doubles, we usually use the circle of work. I've experienced some very sniffy ringers saying that this is not the proper way of learning ringing, but we'll show you here that the circle of work can be useful when conducting. So just a couple of definitions. Calling is generally the term used for putting the calls in the correct place whilst keeping yourself right. Now that's hard enough, but conducting also includes the keeping of the band right as well. However, please note that really it is the band's responsibility for keeping themselves right. Any conductor, any help the conductor can give really should be seen as an added bonus. Okay, let's start part 1 of this tutorial. So here we'll be going over Bob doubles, looking at the so-called blue line, the grid and place notation. We'll also cover the meaning of place bells, which are extremely useful for more complicated methods. and we look at lead head notation and the plain and bob lead ends. So we usually learn the plain course of plain bob doubles using the circle of work. Okay, so from the 2 we learn that its next is 3/4 down, then long fifths, then dodge 3/4 up, and then make seconds. And from the 4 it'll be long fifths first, then 3/4 up, then make seconds. So this is great. This is really good as a starter, but it doesn't tell you anything about the method structure at all. So what we actually do is plain hunt until the end of the lead, and then we do something. That something can be a dodge or make places. We'll then hunt until the next end of lead, and we do something again. We keep repeating this sequence until rounds comes up. Now there are several ways in which this can be written down, and some of these I'm sure that you will know. So firstly, we'll look at the blue line, which originates from a book of methods by Jasper Snowden, which was published in 1881, and so you can still get it today. So the treble here is marked in red, and another bell's path is marked in blue. Here we have shown the path of the 2. A plain course of bob doubles takes 4 leads. Here we've shown each lead as a separate column. There are 10 changes or rows to each lead, and we see that the change at the bottom of the column is repeated at the top of the next. We've labelled each row H or B, depending on whether the row is rung at hand or backstroke. Now that's not usually done, but we've just done it here for clarity. Okay. So let's now add all the other bells. So for clarity here, we have kept the treble in red, the 2 is in blue, the 3 is in green, the 4 is in purple, and the 5 is in yellow. We will stick with these colours throughout this tutorial, but despite these different colours, you can see that the patterns in each lead are exactly the same. Now, let's look at the top of each column. That is the start of each lead. By definition, the start of each lead is when the treble rings its backstroke in the lead. Now follow what's happening with the 2 in blue. It starts off in seconds place in the row here. At the start of the next lead, it's now in 4th place. At the start of the 3rd lead, it's in 5th place. And at the start of the 4th lead, it is in 3rd place. We say that the 2 starts in as seconds place bell, becomes 4th place bell, then 5th place bell, and finally 3rd place bell. So place bells, these can be really useful for more complicated methods, but they can be useful for all methods in general. In plain bob doubles, the place bell order 2, 4, 5, 3 in the plain course is the coursing order. Don't worry, we're going to be covering some more of that in the 3rd tutorial. Right, so as we showed before, one lead is really all you need to describe the method. It's got all the pattern here. This compact form here is often called the grid. So let's follow the 2 through the playing course. Okay, so it rings, it's plain hunts out to the back, comes up at the end, it dodges and becomes 4th place bell. So we now follow the 4 from the top. So it hunts in, hunts out, does its long 5ths and becomes 5th place bell. Okay. So now we follow the 5 from the top. It hunts in, hunts out to do its dodge and it becomes 3rd place bell. Now follow the 3 from the top. So it hunts out, hunts back in, makes 2nds, and it's back as 2nd place bell. So you can see that the grid is all you need to describe the method. Finally, we have the polar plots. So these are quite fun. So how these work is that 1st place is plotted in the inner circle, 2nd place, 3rd place, 4th place, and finally 5th place is the outer circle. And as we progress through the method, we move around the circle like this. So if we look at the treble, we see that it hunts out to the back, lies, then into the front, out to the back, lies, and into the front, and it does this 4 times for the plain course. On this plot here, I've got the 2, and we can see that it's making 2nds here. It's doing 3, 4 down here, long 5ths here, and 3, 4 up here. On the 2nd plot, I've just added all the bells. Now, some people do find these polar plots quite useful when they're visualizing the method. Personally, I don't find them particularly helpful, but they're certainly pretty. So now we come to a few useful terms. You may well have come across these, but it's worthwhile recapping, I think. Okay, so dodging partners. Your dodging partner is the bell you dodge with. In plain bob doubles, the bell you dodge with in 3, 4 up is the same bell you dodge with in 3, 4 down. Okay, so in the plain course of plain bob doubles, the 2 and the 5 are dodging partners, and the 3 and the 4 are dodging partners. Now we will be covering a little bit more on this later, I think in part 3. Okay. So some other terms here that are useful. Your course bell is the bell you follow around. You take it or turn it from the lead. Your after bell is the bell that follows you. Your after bell turns you or takes you from the lead. Okay, so let's just look at the first lead of bob doubles. Here we have it. Okay. So if you're the 4, so in purple here, the 2 in blue here leads before you and it takes you from the lead. This is your course bell. And the 5 here leads after you and it takes you from the lead. Okay. So course and after bells are useful for keeping yourself and the band right. Don't forget that every time a call is made, the course and after bells do change. Now, more on that later. Okay, so now let's look at the terms lead head and lead end. By definition or convention, each lead starts at the backstroke lead of the treble, here and here. This is known as the lead head. The way we've drawn out each lead here, the lead head is also the last row of the column, which is then repeated at the top of the next. So these are the lead heads. The lead end is the end of the lead. That is the hand stroke lead of the treble here. Now, just a little warning, ringers often called the lead head the lead end. Try not to get confused when the conductor calls lead end now when they actually mean the backstroke lead of the treble. Just something to bear in mind. Now look at each of the lead heads. Okay, so here we list the order of the bells at the lead head, but miss out the treble because it's always leading and the drumming tenor. Okay. So we're listing them, the lead heads here, so we can see the first lead head is in rounds. So remember, blue is 2, green is 3, purple is 4, and yellow is the 5. So we have the first row here, which is rounds 2, 3, 4, 5. Then the second row is 3, 5, 2, 4. The third row is 5, 4, 3, 2. And the fourth row is 4, 2, 5, 3, and then we come back into rounds at the end. Okay, so now let's look at what the 3 is doing. So it starts off in thirds place. Remember, we're missing off the treble, so it's 1, 2, 3. It then becomes seconds place bell, then becomes fourth place bell, then fifth place bell, and then back as third place bell. Okay, so now for a quick tour around place notation. Just note that place notation has absolutely nothing to do with place bells. It can get very confusing, okay? But what it is a shorthand way of describing a method, and it shows how bells move from one row to the next. So when a method does progress from one row to the next, it will either keep in the same place, that is, make places, or it will cross with an adjacent bell. For every row, a note is made of where places are made. We don't take a note of where bells cross over. We assume that when you don't mention it, they'll be crossing over. So if we look at plain bob doubles, we see that when we go from the first row to the second row, the bell in fifth place makes a place, so we note 5 down. Okay. When we go from row 2 to row 3, the bell in first place keeps in the same place, so we write a 1 down. As we go from row 3 to row 4, the only bell that stays in the same place is the bell in fifth place, so we write 5 down, and so on as we go through the method. Now things get a little bit different and interesting at the end here as we go from this row here to this row here. So the bell now in 5th place stays in the same place. The bell in 2nd place stays in the same place, and it makes seconds, and the bell in 1st place remains in the same place. So we write down 1, 2, 5. So the whole of the place notation for bob doubles is 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 2, 5, and we separate each of these numbers with a dot. Okay. So this first block is the place notation for plain hunt, and at the lead end we have 1, 2, 5, and that forces the bells to dodge 3, 4 up and down. Okay. Now, as plain bob doubles is symmetric, it said it's a palindromic method, we can actually shorten this here, and we just write it out as 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, followed by LE for lead end. Then we write out what the lead end place notation is, which is 1, 2, 5. Okay, so if no bells make places, which that situation doesn't arise in bob doubles, but it does in something like bob minor, then we use an X or a dash in place of the number. Okay, so what happens at the lead end if a bob is called? Okay, so here we have the plain lead end and the lead end where a bob is called. Well, instead of making places the 1st place and the 2nd place bell and the 5th place bell, we make places in the 1st place bell, 4th place bell and 5th place bell. So if you were about to make seconds, become 2nd place bell, you can't because you're not making places, so you have to run out and you become 3rd place bell and you make seconds next time. If you were about to dodge 3, 4 down, you can't because the 4th place bell is making places. You have to then run in, become 2nd place bell and dodge 3, 4 down next time. And if you were to dodge 3, 4 up to become 3rd place bell, you actually now make places, so you become 4th place bell and you run in and you ring long 5ths next time. Okay, so now we've reached the end of part 1 and we've covered quite a bit. We've looked at the circle of work and other ways the method can be written down, and we've gone over the very useful idea of place bells. We've introduced the idea of the lead end and the lead head, and we've shown what happens at the lead end when a bob is called. Next time we will introduce you to calling plain courses and touches, and we'll go over what you need to do when calling a court appeal. Part 2. Calling plain bob doubles. So this is the second part of the 3-part tutorial series. this second part covers the calling of plain bob doubles, and we'll start with showing you what you need to do to call a plain course. This will be followed by the calling of touches, and we will introduce the concept of calling positions and show you pretty much all the touches that can be called. Finally, we'll show you some of the tricks that we use when we call a court appeal. Okay, so the first thing you'll need to master is the calling of a plain course. Firstly, if you're calling, whether it be a plain course or a touch, you are in charge. Really, you should try your best to keep yourself right. The responsibility of the other band members is to keep themselves right. You don't need to put others right. It's a useful skill, but that will come later with practice. So your instructions should be in your usual voice, as Coleman says, clear and to the center of the circle. They should be loud enough so everybody can hear you, but not so loud so you deafen the band. Okay. So you need to let rounds stabilize. Around 10 whole blows is a good number. Really, you shouldn't start into the method until rounds are satisfactory. Bad rounds will not suddenly make a very good struck method. So when all is lovely and you're ready, you then say go bob doubles, just as a treble is starting to pull off at hand stroke. Okay, so you then ring as many plain courses as you like, and then call this is all or that's all as the treble starts to pull its hand stroke just before rounds appear at backstroke, as shown here. Okay, so the treble's hand stroke in the lead, you're just about to dodge back here if you were the 4, for example. You call that's all. As you're in charge, the ringing will continue forever unless you tell the band to do something, so you really must remember to call stand. So call stand at the treble hand stroke lead after roughly 5 whole pulls. Okay, so here is the full plain course showing you the position of the calls. So you say go bob doubles, the hand stroke lead as a treble is just pulling off its hand stroke here, and then the method will continue, and then just as you're about to do your dodge, if you're ringing the 4 here at the hand stroke lead of the treble, you call that's all, and it will come round into rounds. So the thing to do is for you to remember what you would be doing as your final piece of work in the plain course. Okay, so once you've mastered that, you can now move on to calling a touch. So bob, now this is far away the most common call to make when ringing bob doubles. Singles, yeah, they can be called and they can be quite fun, but they don't look or feel anything like singles that you may have come across when ringing bob minor. Other calls can be made. These are variations. Don't worry about these now, but they can be fun. So a bob is called at the start of the row exactly 1 whole pull before the row when the call will take effect. Well, what does that mean? Well, in bob doubles, this is where the treble is just about to pull backstroke in seconds place, just before it leads. To put the call in the right place, you can look for the treble. And that's a very useful, important signpost. But when you're starting to call, it's easier to know what you will be about to do when the bob is called. Where a call is made is known as the calling position, and there's several different calling position names depending on what work you are about to do. Okay, so these are the only places that a call can be made. If you are just about to do your, so here we have the, it doesn't really matter, but we just got the 2 in blue here. So if you are just about to do your 3/4 down, you see the backstroke of the treble in seconds place as it's coming into the lead here. If you call here, it's called the in position. The call when you're at the back, your first blow in fifths, that's called your home. If you're about to do your 3/4 up dodge, this is called the make position. It's also called the fourths as well. Yeah. And if you are about to make seconds, it's called the out position. Okay. So just another little warning. So other methods may have different calling position names, and they may even use the same name as here, but for different positions. So once again, don't get confused. Okay. So let's look at the easiest touch. Here you call a bob every time you are just about to ring your first blow in long fifths. So you do this 3 times, and this is known as 3 homes, or calling yourself unaffected. After the 3rd bob, you say this is all just before the bells come round into rounds, as we showed a couple of slides back. This will produce all possible combinations of bells on 5 bells. That is, it will produce an extent, which is 120 changes, which comes from 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Okay. This is known as a 120, a 120, or 6-core, lots of names for it, but can be called from any working bell. That's anything other than the treble or the tenor. Okay, so let's call this from the 4. Now the 4 will start to ring its long fifths at the end of the first lead here. So as it's just about to ring its long fifths, it will call bob. That will then be followed by 3 plain leads, and at the end of the next lead, the 4 then calls another bob as it's just about to ring its long fifths again. 3 more plain leads will follow, and at the end of the next lead, it'll call its 3rd and final bob. And that's it. So it's very straightforward. The 4 is unaffected. It doesn't have to worry about what's going on at the bob. It just has to remember to call a bob every time it is about to make its long fifths. Now this particular touch can be called from any bell. Let's see what happens. So let's look at the 2. So it's exactly the same touch, but let's see what happens with the 2. Well, the 2 at the end of the first lead, it would have done its 3-4 down, but if it makes it, when a call is made here, it then has to run in, and it carries on. At the next bob, see a bob is called at this point here, it then runs out, and at the third call it makes the bob. Now exactly the same touch, let's follow the 3. The 3's in green. If bob's called first here, it will run out, then it will make the bob, and at the final call it will run in, and finally we look at the 5. Firstly makes the bob, then it runs in, then it runs out at the final call. So if we want the 4 to be unaffected, either the 4 will call itself unaffected, a bob every time it is about to ring long fifths, or the 2 would call in, out, make, or the 3 would call out, make, in, or the 5 would call make, in, out. This is a circle of calling, a bit like the circle of work when we were learning bob doubles. This is a circle of calling, in, out, make. So yeah, see, so if you're going to keep the 4 unaffected and you're ringing the 3, you're calling from the 3, you would call out first, you would call a bob at the position make, and you would then call a bob at the position in. Okay, so some people remember this using the phrase Isle of Man, and I certainly do, and this is where we have the IOM, Isle of Man, representing in, out, make. We just cycle this round to get the different 120s. Another way of remembering this, mentioned by Coleman, is using baby bio here, representing bob, in, out. Each to their own really. Whatever helps you remember is perfect. Okay, let's look in a little bit more detail from the 5, which is, and we want to keep the 4 unaffected, so we're ringing the same touch, but we're now calling it from the 5. Now the 5 has to call make, in, out. So we call a bob at the 5's backstroke in thirds just before you're about to dodge 3-4 up, and you make the bob. Okay, so you just to ringing over the treble. As you're ringing over the treble, you call the bob at that point there. Right, so that's the make. Now the next time you want the in, so you know the in occurs as you would have rung your 3-4 down dodge. So if you're just about to ring your 3-4 down dodge, you call bob at this point here and you run in. Okay, and now you want to look out for the out, so you look for the point, so you're telling yourself that, right, next time I'm just about to make seconds, I need to call the bob and run out. So the final bob is at the backstroke when you're in the lead here and you're just about to would have made seconds, but instead you run out, and a bob is called at this point here. So it's your backstroke in the lead, this point here. Okay, so it won't surprise you to learn that there are 4 different 120s. at least 4. So it's where the 2's unaffected, the 3's unaffected, the 4's unaffected, and the 5's unaffected. In fact, these are the only 4 120s that can be rung. Okay. That's it. There are no more. So, as we've seen, if we want the 4 unaffected, the 5 would call make in out, and the 3 would call out make in. If we want the 2 unaffected, the 5 would call out make in, and the 4 would call make in out, and so on. So here is quite a useful table. So this just summarizes the calls to keep your chosen bell unaffected. So you can see that so if you ring the 2 here and you're calling from the 2 and you want to keep the 3 unaffected, you would call make in out. Okay. So you can either learn this table or work out what you would be doing when your chosen bell is ringing long fifths for the first time. So as an example here, if you're ringing the 5 and you want the 4 to be unaffected, the 4 starts off in 4th place, runs in, then makes long fifths next time, and you start in 5th place, you run in, then you would dodge 3 4 up if you're ringing the plain course. Therefore, to call the 4 unaffected, make would be your first call. You can then use the Isle of Man to see what you would call next. So in will be next, and then you call out. If you're ringing the 5 and you want the 2 unaffected, you note that 2 is your dodging partner in the plain course. So you know that it will be ringing long fifths when you are making seconds. Okay. Therefore, to call the 2 unaffected, out will be your first call. Again, noting the Isle of Man. Okay. You'll then call make and then in. So here we have the lead heads written out for the 4 different 120s. So the lead head just after the bob is called is represented by the dash here, this little horizontal dash here. And there's several things to note. So for example, so if we look at this where the 2 is being called unaffected, the bell in 5th place is the one that's unaffected here after the bob is called. So it remains in 5th place, so here, here, and here. The bell in 4th place after the bob is called, so the 4, the 5, and the 3, is the bell that's making the bob. The bell in 3rd place, so the 5, the 3, and the 4 in this case, is running out after the bob is called, and the bell in 2nd place here is the bell that's running in. Okay. So if the 2 is going to be unaffected, there'll be 1 plain lead, then at the end of the next lead a bob will be called, then there'll be 1, 2, 3 plain leads, at the end of the next lead a bob will be called, there'll be 1, 2, 3 plain leads, then at the end of the next one a bob will be called, then there'll be 2 plain leads, 1, 2, before it comes round and we call that's all. So this can be written in another way by saying, right, P, B, P, P, B, P, B, P, 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 B, P, P, where P is a plain lead end and B is where there's a bob at the lead end. One final slightly tricky thing to remember and to note here is that if the 5 is being called unaffected, there will be 3 whole plain leads, and at the end of the 4th lead a bob will be called, and this means that the final bob will be called right at the end of the final lead. So be prepared to call that's all straight after you've called the bob, just as rounds comes up here. So let's look at some other touches of plain bob doubles that can be rung. So we're looking at these two here, which are 60 changes long. So if you're calling from the 5, the first is just calling a bob every time you're about to ring 3/4 up. That is making calling make 3 times, and this can be called from any bell, noting that this is bob plain, bob plain, bob plain, but very easy calling it from the 5. The second is make 3 times if you're calling it from the 4. Once again, this can be called from any bell by noting this is a plain bob, plain bob, plain bob, which will come round just after the final bob is called. Here are some other touches of plain bob doubles. So first, you can call bob at the end of the 1st and 2nd leads, and the touch will come round after just 20 changes. This can be useful, especially for teaching, as the 2 and the 3 just plain hunt. There are actually 5 touches 100 changes long, but these are very rarely called. So for example, you call plain plain bob, plain bob, plain plain bob, plain bob as one of them. It's fun calling this, but as I say, very rarely called. And I think that we've now covered all the possible touches of plain bob doubles. Please let me know if there are others. So you've been able to get lots of practice calling touches of bob doubles, and you're itching to call a quarter peal. It's actually not that difficult. The main difficulty is maintaining concentration. So let's go over what a quarter peal is and some ways in which it can be called. So a quarter peal of doubles is at least 1,260 changes long. But we've already seen that an extent of doubles is only 120 changes. Therefore, we must repeat rows to get up to the 1,260. Now, the number of repetitions must be the fewest possible. This means ringing 10 120s and 160. If you didn't want to call a 60, then 11 120s would be acceptable, and this gives you a total number of changes of 1,320. So you may think that calling yourself unaffected for 11 120s is the way to go for your first attempt. I would advise against this. Not only is it very boring for you and the band, it'll be almost impossible for you to keep count of the number of extents rung. I prefer to use the following strategy or variant. Okay, so we can first call the 5 unaffected for the first 120, then a 120 with the 4 unaffected, then a 3 unaffected, then another one with the 2 unaffected. Repeating this will give 960 changes. You can then call the 4 unaffected and the 5 unaffected. This will give a total of 1,200 changes, and you need just a final 60 to finish off. Okay. So to help remember which extent is being run, I associate each 120 with the ringer being unaffected. That is, if I'm ringing the 5, Emily is on the 4, Ian is on the 3, and Sarah is on the 2, I may say to myself that the first extent is my 120, then Emily's 120, then Ian's, then Sarah's, then back to my 120, and so on. But keeping concentration is still the major challenge. Gosh, we've now reached the end of part 2. We're now 2/3 of the way through. So this time we've shown you how to call a plain course, how to start and stop, and don't forget to call stand when finished. We've looked at calling yourself unaffected 3 times, which is likely to be your first touch. The calling positions in, out, make were covered, and we introduced the phrase Isle of Man to help you ring the 4 possible 120s. We showed the ways you can call other bells unaffected for the 120s, and we covered all the other possible touches. And finally, we gave you some tips for calling your first quarter. Next time, we will go through some of the possible signposts that can be useful for keeping yourself and possibly the band right. We will also introduce how coursing order can be used to help conducting. We have now reached part 3 of this series. Here we will be looking at keeping you and the band right. Okay, so I'm sure that many of you will be familiar with using the treble to help you remember what work you'll be doing next. We will be reviewing this helpful signpost, but there are a number of others. So we'll be going through these as they can be useful for keeping you and the band right. We will then look at coursing order, which is another tool often used by experienced conductors who can magically put the band right when all appears lost. Firstly, the signposts. Understanding the structure of any method can really help you see what's going on. There are various signposts that when you come across them as you're ringing, you will know what you and the other bells should be doing at that point. So these signposts can help keep yourself right and may also help to check if the band is right. I want to note here that it's really not easy putting others right and saying the right thing, but this will come with practice. One of the first signposts that you come across is where you pass the treble. Here you look out for where you pass or ring over the treble as you hunt up to the back to remind you of what your next work should be. So if the treble takes you off the lead, you make seconds. You ring over the treble when you're in 3rd place, you dodge 3/4 up next. If you ring over the treble when you're in 4th place, you do long 5ths. And if you ring over the treble when you're making your first blow in 5th place, you will dodge 3/4 down next. So seeing where you pass the treble when you hunt down to the front can also be useful, but not as helpful as when you are hunting up. Like with all these signposts we're going to be talking about, be careful you don't rely on them too much. You don't want to collapse if the treble goes wrong, for example. Okay, so let's look to see exactly what we mean by passing the treble. So here we will follow the 2 in the plain course as we hunt up. Okay, so first lead we pass the treble when we're in 5th place. Here so that we know we're going to be doing 3/4 down at the next lead end. At the next lead, we will ring over the treble when we are in 4th place. So we ring long fifths at the lead end. Next time, when we're in 3rd place, we're going to be ringing over the treble. See, so we're in 3rd place here. So that means we are going to be ringing 3/4 up. And finally, we ring over the treble when we're in 2nds, which means we then are in 2nd place, so we make 2nds here. So here we'll show where we ring over the treble as we hunt down. See that if we're ringing over the treble at our backstroke, that's right, at our hand stroke, when we're in 5th place here, we will make 2nds next, and so on. As I say, I find the treble more useful when I'm hunting up, but can be useful when we're hunting down as well. So let's look to see if there are any signposts at the lead end. So first we'll consider the plain lead end as shown here. So the first thing to do is to recognize your dodging partner. So you know that when you dodge 3/4 up, they should be dodging 3/4 down. So if you're the 5, you're dodging 3/4 up, your dodging partner will be dodging 3/4 down. When you're dodging 3/4 down, they will be dodging 3/4 up. As you make 2nds, they will be doing long fifths, and when you're doing long fifths, they will be making 2nds. Okay. Now let's look at what's happening if you're doing long fifths. Okay. So the first bell you ring over here, that will be doing its 3/4 down dodge. The bell you ring over in your 2nds blow in 5th place, the hand stroke blow in 5th place, is the bell is doing their 3/4 up dodge, and the other bell, your dodging partner, will be making 2nds. So you should be able to see everything going on in the method when you're doing your long fifths. Okay, now keeping the treble right is reasonably straightforward at the lead end. So if you're ringing long fifths, the treble hand stroke lead is just before your 2nd blow in 5ths. If you're about to ring 3/4 up, the treble's first blow in the lead is just before your first blow in 4th place here. If you're about to ring 3/4 down, the treble's first blow will be just before you're about to ring your first blow in 3rd place. And finally, probably the easiest one, if you're about to ring 2nds, the treble hand stroke lead is your first blow in 2nds here. Okay. Now let's look at what happens if a bob is called at the end of the lead. So if you are ringing long fifths and a call is made, you will be unaffected. Your first blow in 5ths at backstroke will be over the bell that's running in. Your 2nd and 3rd blows will be over the bell that's making the bob, and your final blow in fifths will be over the bell that has run out. Now, if you're making the bob, your first blow in fourths, which is at hand stroke, will be over the bell running in. See here. Your second blow in fourths will be over the bell running out. The other bell is making long fifths. So once again, from the bell that's making the bob, you can see what all the other bells are doing. Okay, so if you were to run out, you would ring over the treble. Then next you will ring in thirds place over the bell that's running in. Your first blow in fifth place will be over the bell that should have been doing the long fifths. So see here. Your blow in fourth place should be over the bell that had made the bob. If you're running in, then you'll ring over the treble when you're in seconds place. This is actually a very useful signpost here. And then you'll take the treble from the lead. The bell that takes you from the lead here is the bell that should have made the bob. Okay, so we've gone through some of the useful signposts. Once learnt, they are quite easy to use in practice, but they will require lots of practice to see. Now, the coursing order can also be used to keep yourself and others right. It's a bit more complex, but probably not as difficult as you may think. Looking at a plain course of plain bob doubles, we can see that in the first lead, the bells come to the lead in the order 2, 4, 5, 3. In the second lead, the order is 3, 2, 4, 5, and third lead 5, 3, 2, 4, and in the fourth lead they come to the lead in the order 4, 5, 3, 2. This also gives the order of the bells you pass as you run in from the back. For example, the 5 will pass the 3, then the 2, and finally the 4 before it leads. The 3 will pass the 2, then the 4, and finally the 5 before it leads, and so on. In plain bob doubles, this is the coursing order. So normally we would write the coursing order out with the highest bell first, and it cycles around. So all these numbers represent the same coursing order, but we would write out this coursing order normally as 5, 3, 2, 4. Now let's look at the order of work and the work each bell is doing. If the 5 does 3, 4 up, the 3 will then be making seconds, the 2 will be doing the 3, 4 down, and the 4 will be doing long fifths. If the 5 is making seconds, the 3 will be doing 3, 4 down, the 2 will be doing long fifths, and the 4 does 3, 4 up, and so on. Whatever the 5 is doing, the 3 does the next work, the 2 does the next work, and the 4 does the next in the circle of work. So the circle of work in plain bob doubles follows the coursing order. So from all of this, I'm sure you can now see that knowing the coursing order could be very useful indeed. You can find different definitions of coursing order on the net, but it's basically the order in which the bells move through the method, following each other around. In some methods, like plain bob doubles, the coursing order can really easily be seen and it pops up all over the place. In other methods, the coursing order is still very useful but not so clearly visible, and in other methods or principles, so for example Stedman, so the principle, the coursing order is not a useful concept at all. Okay. But here, let's just consider bob doubles here. So let's look at the lead heads in the plain course. You can see that the coursing order can be derived from the transformation shown here applied to the first lead head. Okay, so we take the second place bell, the fourth place bell, the fifth place bell, and third place bell. So this gives the coursing order 2, 4, 5, 3, or 5, 3, 2, 4. Okay. At the next lead head, the same transformation, this one here, same transformation gives 3, 2, 4, 5, which gives the coursing order 3, 2, 4, 5, which is equivalent to 5, 3, 2, 4. The next lead head, same transformation gives 5, 3, 2, 4, same coursing order, and finally same transformation gives 4, 5, 3, 2. Okay, so the coursing order, as I said, is cyclic, and all these coursing orders are equivalent. So remember this transformation that we're applying here, so we'll use this in a minute. Now we can look to see what happens to the coursing order when a bob is called. So the coursing order will change, but how many coursing orders are there? In plain bob doubles, there are 4 working bells. So this may suggest that there are 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, 24 different coursing orders. But the coursing order is cyclic, so that's, as we see, 5, 4, 3, 2 is the same as 4, 3, 2, 5, and that's the same as 3, 2, 5, 4, which is the same as 2, 5, 4, 3. So there are actually just 6 lots of 4 identical coursing orders. That's 24 divided by 4, so 6. So this is starting to look like something we can actually handle. But it gets even better than that, because in practice you omit your bell from the coursing order, because you know when you're ringing. So therefore you only need to keep the order of 3 bells in your head. For example, the ringer of the 5 only needs to keep the order of the 2, 3 and 4 in their head. So this is now looking like it is really easily manageable, but it is actually surprisingly difficult. Like with everything in ringing, it does come with practice. So let's look at a 120 of plain bob doubles with the 4 unaffected. So the coursing order will be unchanged until a bob is called. So here we've got all the lead heads written out. So remember the transformation we had a couple of slides ago, where we used the same transformation on the lead heads. So lead head here is 2, 3, 5, 4. So giving that transformation after the first bob, the coursing order would become 2, 5, 543, which is equivalent to 5432. And the second bob produces the lead head 5234. Applying the same transformation gives you 5342 as the coursing order. And once again, after the final bob is called, we have 3245, which is equivalent to 5324, which is back to the plain course, which is where we wanted to be. So let's just go back to the plain course where the coursing order is 5324. The bells will come into the lead in the order 5324. Now, if you are ringing the 5, you would keep the order 324 in your head. The 3 leads after you. It takes you from the lead and is your after bell. You will follow the 4. Remember that the coursing order is cyclic, and you will take it from the lead. It is your course bell. Now consider the circle of work. If you're about to dodge 3-4 down, the 3 will be doing long fifths. The 2 will be doing 3-4 up. It's your dodging partner, and the 4 will be making seconds. These are useful observations to help you put the band right, but needs lots of practice. Okay, let's look at a summary of these observations for the plain course. So here we see that if you are the 3, if you're ringing the 3, you would keep the bell order 2, 4, 5 in your head. 2 is the after bell, 4 is the dodging partner, and 5 is your course bell. So more generally, if A, B, C, D is the coursing order and you're ringing the D, you would keep the order A, B, C in your head. A is your after bell, B is your dodging partner, and C is your course bell, which takes you from the lead. Now we can go back and see what happens to the 3 bell order when a bob is called. It does depend on what calling position is being used. Here we go. So after a bob at home, the order ABC becomes BCA. So the order rotates, so the A comes to the back. So the A then becomes your course bell. Like that. After a bob at make, the rotation is the other way round. So the C comes to the front, becomes your after bell. Your course bell becomes your after bell, and the order becomes CAB. A bob at in changes these 2 round, swaps these 2 round. So ABC becomes BAC, and a bob at out changes these 2 bells. So ABC becomes ACB. So let's, just as an example, let's call a 120 with us being unaffected. That is 3 homes. The plain course order is A, B, C. At the first bob, it becomes B, C, A. At the second bob, it rotates again and becomes C, A, B. And at the third bob, it becomes ABC again, so that's back to the plain course. Now let's call a 120 by calling in out make. So we start in the plain course, which gives you A, B, C. The first bob at in, it will become BAC because these first two swap over. At the second bob out, it will become BCA because these second and third ones swap over, so it becomes BCA. And at the third bob, it would become ABC, back at the plain course, because that's the make. So it rotates around. Here we show what the other bells do at the bob. Okay. So this is what we've just covered before. So after a bob at home, the order ABC becomes BCA. A makes the bob, B runs out, and C runs in. After a bob at make, the order becomes CAB. So A runs out, B runs in, and C does long fifths. After a bob at in, ABC becomes BAC. That's long fifths. B makes the bob, and C runs out. And after a bob at out, ABC becomes ACB. So A runs in, B makes long fifths, and C makes the bob. Unfortunately, there's no real easy way other than just learning this this table. That's just a little bit of homework to be done. So the great thing about knowing the coursing order is that you can always get back to the plain course with the right combination of calls. Okay, so say that you've got into a muddle with the calling and you see that the coursing order is CBA. You can call a bob at in to give BCA, because you swap over these first two, so it gives BCA. Calling a bob at make then gives us ABC, because the A comes to the front, so it becomes ABC, which is back in the plain course, and so you'll come round. Okay, but how do you know the coursing order? Well, as we mentioned before, and the way I do it is to note the order of the bells you pass as you move from the back to the front. You can also look out for your course and after bells. The remaining bell is your dodging partner. Right, well, we've done it. We've now reached the end of part 3 of this tutorial. In this part we have shown you some of the signposts you can use to help keep yourself right, and you can possibly use these to help correct some of the slips made by the rest of the band. We have looked at where you pass the treble and the structure at the lead end, and we've introduced coursing order, which is particularly clear and useful in plain bob doubles, and we've shown that you only need to keep the order of 3 bells in your head. We have used this order to identify your course and after bells and your dodging partner. We have shown what happens to the order at bobs and what the other bells should be doing. We've also shown you how you can get back into the plain course if you get into a mess with the calling, or 2 bells swap over by mistake, for example. Unfortunately, to successfully put this into action does require a lot of practice, as with anything in ringing. Okay, so this is the end of this series of tutorials. So in summary, over the 3 parts, We have been through the theory of plain bob doubles, consolidating what you already know. This may give you other ways of looking at plain bob doubles and other methods in general. We have shown all the possible touches and how they can be called, and given you some of the tools conductors use to put the band right. So we've been using signposts and coursing order. This will take lots of practice, but please have fun developing your ringing. Okay, so here are just a few of the references I've used. Probably some others that I've used as well. I'm sorry if I haven't included them.